The legend of Eustace Captain Kidd begins here.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
And before we begin, I'm not Brago, as you can tell. He's currently on vacation and he wanted me to step in for this one video, so don't get too used to me. I'm just a guy that works at the Denny's across the street. But anyways, let's get back to the video. You're probably wondering, hold on, did you not read the chapter? Well, yes I did. And I agree Kidd is in a really bad spot right now. He's on the verge of death. His ship has been completely destroyed. He's drowning near enemy territory. He lost all of his road poneglyphs, and he received a humiliating one-hit KO by Shanks. Yeah, it's kinda rough. It can't get much worse than this. But what if I told you this is where Kidd's story actually begins? Now obviously, Kidd will never be the Pirate King. Let's just get that out of the way. That title is reserved for Luffy only. But Kidd's rocky run for the title doesn't end here. I've seen people say that this is Oda's way of cleaning up the candidates to speed up the story, but I would argue that what just happened to Kidd in Elbaf has been planned since his inception in Sabaody. For starters, Kidd never needed the road poneglyphs anyways. You see, the road poneglyphs are designed in a way that you need all 4 of them to find the location on the map. For someone like Kidd, who not only didn't have the Zoroad poneglyph, but also lost his chance of getting it from Luffy and Wano, any other poneglyph he gets is practically useless, even if he had someone who could read them. So with that in mind, why did Oda give him Big Mom and Kaido's road poneglyph then? This, my friends, is the key to the puzzle here. They were never intended for Kidd in the first place. Shanks has far better use of the poneglyphs than Kidd, because Shanks is obviously friends with the Minks and has seen their poneglyph while he was with Roger. It's highly likely that when he visited them in his own journey later on, he took a rubbing for himself, meaning with the now acquired Big Mom and Kaido poneglyphs from Kidd, he has a total of 3, while Kidd has 0. But like I said, Kidd never needed them anyways. Oda specifically introduced an alternate route to Laugh Tale for Kidd post-Wano via the man marked by flames. Before going on, I won't even ask you to entertain what I'm saying. If you disagree at any point in this following section, you're free to leave a dislike and stop watching the video. So, when talking about the fight for the One Piece, Kidd and Killer say that if they're really gonna start taking it seriously, they have to start looking for the man with burn marks. Since we know the One Piece is said to be on Laugh Tale, we can just rephrase it to say, to get to Laugh Tale, you need to look for the man with burn marks. Saying that every time is a little bit tiring, so let's just go with Saul, even if it's not actually him. And the reason why you don't need the poneglyphs for Saul to get you to Laugh Tale is because Oda had Kidd say to Luffy that despite having 3 road poneglyph rubbings and Robin who can read them, he was actually behind Kidd simply because Kidd knew about Saul. If Saul was just someone who could read the poneglyphs, it would be nonsensical for Kidd or Oda to even say that Kidd has an advantage in knowing about Saul, since Luffy literally has Robin who can read them in his actual crew, which means that finding Saul and using whatever method or knowledge he has is more direct than the rubbings and having someone who can actually read the poneglyphs. This was the intended way for Kidd to reach Laugh Tale from the very start of the 4 Emperors saga. If we take a step back and look at the entire path and character of Kidd, even pre-time skip, we start to see some serious heavy parallels with Luffy. Before anything else, out of all of the Supernova, Oda chose for Kidd and Luffy to be the only 2 captains with a right-hand man, also with them in the worst generation. And not only that, Kidd had a bounty of 315 million, while Luffy had a very close 300 million. And the same goes for Killer and Zoro, who were 162 million and 120 million respectively. Another obvious parallel, of course, is that the ending of this chapter is identical to when Luffy's crew were crushed by Kizaru, Kuma, and Sentomaru. From the Oda box to the narrator box, and even to the format of the text, it is downright identical. You have to ask yourself, why did Oda bother to give Kidd these constant parallels and callbacks to Luffy? It's also easy to forget, as I even forgot this myself, but Kaido, unlike Luffy and Law, was actually a detour for Kidd. While Luffy and Law made an alliance to take down Kaido, Kidd wasn't even thinking of Kaido until he was attacked. His real target has always been Shanks. This plotline is quite similar to Luffy's detour with Big Mom. In fact, if you look back at the totality of Luffy and Kid's path in the New World, it can be summarized as this. 1. They form an alliance targeting a specific Yonko, Shanks for Kid and Kaido for Luffy. 2. At some point, they get sidetracked by another Yonko, Kaido for Kid and Big Mom for Luffy. 3. They defeat a Big Shot during their sidetrack Yonko adventure, Big Mom for Kid and Katakuri for Luffy. 4. They depart and go back to the original target in the end, Shanks again for Kid and Kaido for Luffy. And lastly, 5. They get absolutely demolished and humbled by a single attack by said Yonko. Even though Luffy is obviously slightly ahead of Kid in the timeline of events, it's bizarre how much Kid is walking through the same path Luffy did. I personally thought that Wano was supposed to be Kid's big moment, where he hits rock bottom and we finally see him shine. But in hindsight, Kid's low point in Wano is akin to Luffy's low point in Whole Cake Island. Gee willikers, they even both lost a trusted comrade to a Yonko, and they were thrown in prisons during these Yonko detours. The goal of Wano was to simply serve as his reintroduction arc as a Big Shot in the New World, just like how Luffy got reintroduced to the world as the 5th Emperor post Whole Cake Island, his detour arc. While I'm not saying that Kid will have a 2-year time skip here, but retracing Luffy's path, it marks him at the point where Luffy was when he was defeated by Kaido and forced to take a breather and start working on himself instead of pushing forward haphazardly. Putting all this together, Oda's comments about Kid and Law finally make a lot more sense here. He always implied he has big things planned for Kid and he is more important than Law, but it always felt strange that he focused on Law instead. Since we established that Kid is retracing Luffy's journey against the Yonko, that means the period where Luffy was starting out his quest would be a period where Kid isn't even planned to start yet, which is roughly the period between Punk Hazard and Dressrosa, which explains his decision to focus on Law instead during that waiting period while Kid was on standby. What's most exciting ahead for Kid is not even whether he trains or gets a power-up, but this might very well be the Kid character arc that everybody was waiting for before people lost hope in him. Wano was definitely a crowded arc with many side characters, but if he stays in Elbaf and gets the much needed character focus alongside the Straw Hats in that arc, this could be Kid's round 2, which parallels Luffy's Onigashima. If Kid's upswing starts right now, when he's already a 3 billion berry man, I'm excited to see how far he'll go. So yes, even though he was humiliated by Shanks and is at his lowest point of the story, by looking at the bigger picture, Kid's story, or even the past 500 chapters, Oda seems to be cooking something big for him character-wise, and that's why I believe the legend of Eustass Captain Kidd begins here and now on Elbaf.